Welcome to One on One. I'm Greg Bassett, your host. I'm from the Salisbury Independent newspaper, and this is my first show, succeeding Phil Tillman, the longtime 15-year host, 6,000 episodes I think Phil did, and this is my first one. So welcome, and for my first guest, Mike Dunn.
It's an honor, truly. Congratulations.
Thank you.
We were just talking off air, and I think you will be the perfect replacement for Phil. It was a great thing that Phil did, and I think you're perfect for it. So welcome.
No one can replace Phil.
Understood. We're not saying that, but I think he'll do a great job.
It's like that line, the David Letterman line, when he won the Tonight Show, and they said there'll never be another Tonight Show. There'll never be another Johnny Carson. You have to do your own show. So yeah. We're gonna try to do our own show, absolutely. Just like Phil, because Phil's a handsome man and dresses well.
So you fit the part.
No, I have something to look. I have something to try to achieve.
Yeah.
But we're not here to talk about me. We're here to talk about you. I just was watching on TV. You won the Jefferson Award from WBOC TV. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess you're not allowed to say that.
No.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, it was quite. I'm on the personal level. I didn't think I could ever be surprised. I was one of those people who thought that, and I always know what's going on, but when they got me down into the park to kind of announce that, it was a surprise, and it's beyond humbling, and it's quite an honor, and I just don't know what to say about it other than I'm appreciative of it, and it surprised me, but it was really nice.
Well, let's talk about your history. You're a Salisbury guy.
Yeah, I am. I'm a Y-High guy.
You're a Y-High guy?
guy?
I'm a Y-High guy.
My history, I grew up right there. I'm about as a Y-High guy as it gets because I grew up on Wyman Drive, and my property line, our property line, the back hedge, when you stepped on the other side of it, you're in Y-High.
Right. When I was in metal shop, I could look out the window and see your house.
Correct. And I used to walk home at lunchtime every day, and we would go home and have lunch there. Yeah, so I grew up in the backyard of the Y-High baseball field, the football stadium. I played soccer there. It was my playground as much as it was my school. So yeah, it was a pretty good spot to grow up.
And you're part of a big, well-known family.
Well, there were four of us. We were the class of 75, 76, 77, and 78 at Y-High. So I don't know if we were well known, but there were enough of us that we were there for a while.
Your brothers and sisters have all left town and made fortunes elsewhere, but you're still here.
I'm still here slugging it out.
And as you know, I'm fascinated by people who are still here.
Yeah,
trying to figure out why I'm still here.
I'll tell you, yeah, exactly. We all do. You know, we know how old we are now, and we are like, wow, what happened? But this Jefferson Award stuff has kind of made me think back on it, and my brother and sisters and we were witnesses to community involvement. My parents and their generation, they were members of the Salisbury JCs, and back in the 60s and 70s, the JCs were the 800-pound gorilla for civic activity and engagement. And a lot of things that went on, I literally witnessed them in my PJs or in the backyard, and fireworks were in the backyard. The tennis tournament was at the Civic Center. These things were in my backyard, and clearly that left an impression on me. Now, why it didn't leave an impression on my brother and sister? They're doing wonderfully in Colorado and in Pittsburgh and up in Rock Hall, but clearly something struck a chord, and being involved in the community is something that I'm very proud of, but I had a front row seat to it, so it sort of came easily and naturally.
Now, when we started the newspaper, we have a thing called the Q&A, a question and answer thing every week, and you were one of the first people because I wanted to record people who give back to the community, people who ask why things are the way they are and then try to change them.
Yeah.
And I see you doing that, but that takes so much energy and strength. You were in politics for a while. Yeah. You were the chairman of everything that came along, every sort of do-gooder group. And you had tremendous success here with this Red, White, and Boom. You brought fireworks back to Salisbury, just a very basic thing that the community needed.
I don't know what to say. I look back, it all started early. I mean, you get involved in in my case, junior high school. You get involved in high school, you stay involved. The first, the first thing that got me hooked in a nonprofit locally was the death of a good friend's father, and he died of multiple sclerosis. And there was an MS chapter, local MS chapter, and I got involved in a few things that they were doing to honor the memory of someone that I was pretty close with. And from that, one thing leads to another. My mother passed away of cancer in 1996, so when I moved back to Salisbury in 1998, it seemed like a logical thing to do to get involved in Relay for Life to try to honor the memory of my mom. So the thing that I tell people when they ask about, oh, it takes all this time, it takes all this energy, what I think it really takes is passion. And if you've got something out there that you want to do and you want to pursue, just go do it. This is the kind of community where that can happen. And if you have to live on Delmarva, and you and I do, and we enjoy it, why not get involved in your community? It's really that easy.
But you've looked at it in a different way. I mean, I was always taught that every great community has a hospital and an airport, yeah, and a great library and some kind of community college or college. That's the definition of a great community. But you've taken it to another level where a great community has Christmas light displays every year that are worth looking at. Yeah. The fireworks, the Relay for Life. How many people were involved in that this year?
Oh goodness, Relay always is somewhere around 1,000 to 2,000 people who gather at Purdue Stadium.
And a great facility like Purdue Stadium to have that in.
I'm very proud. One of the things when I was involved in Relay, when it was at Bennett Middle School, yeah, we were outgrowing it. And my wife Karen and I, who I met at a Relay for Life meeting, we were at a Shorebirds game, and we were sitting on the third base side. And I turned to Karen and I said, you know what? Relay would look good out here. And with that, I began that's where thoughts come. You take a thought and you act on it. Red, White, and Boom, quite literally, it was the summer of 2011, and Karen and I were headed to Assateague for the day, and the thought had come to me just the night before. And I turned to her and I said, you know what? I'm going to bring fireworks back to Salisbury next year. And she just looked at me like I had 3 or 4 heads and said, well, how are you going to do that? And I quite truthfully answered, I have no idea. But I knew that I could. I knew that we could. I knew that the community was hungry for it. So, again, if you have an idea, it doesn't matter what the idea is, act on it and it can happen.
Well, that's the key, act on it, because I think all of us ride around in the car, yeah, and we all have these ideas about how things should be, yeah, and we complain about things not being the way they should be, but it's hard to take that step to figure out how to do anything.
I don't think it is hard, respectfully. I think
that's what makes you different than me.
Kim Hudson writes a column for your paper, yeah, every week. She's a very column, very yeah, good friend of mine. When I was the president of the city council, Kim wrote a letter to the editor. It was just a short letter to the editor, which said, you know what? We're not having lights in the park this year. That's unacceptable. It's a tradition. A few days later, my phone rang at work. I didn't know Kim Hudson from Adam. Picked up the phone. Mike, this is Kim Hudson. And I said, hey, you just wrote that letter to the editor. And with that, within 4 days, I called then Mayor Barry Parsons Tillman. She agreed, the city of Salisbury took ownership, and we were off and running to get the lights up again the next year. So that, again, it's that easy, and I don't mean to downplay it. It does take a lot of work, but if you've got a passion and you feel strongly about it, then pursue it.
I think we all know how hard it really is.
Well, it takes some time. Sure it does, but...
Now, you're a fan of Salisbury.
I am.
Salisbury's kind of been on the ropes for a lot of years, yeah, with high crime, and it struggled in the economy. Some negativity in town, just completely unfounded negativity, I've always thought. And you've always sort of gone against that tide of the negativity. How have you managed to do that? What is it about Salisbury that you believe in?
Well, it hasn't been easy to run against the tide of negativity because it is so strong. Whether it's Salisbury or Ocean City or New York City or Baltimore or Des Moines, Iowa, the world's a big place, and there's no way that there aren't good things happening in our little corner of the world. You just mentioned we've got an airport, we've got 2 colleges, we've got a hospital. We've got a retail shopping area. We have the fiber and the fabric to be a wonderful community, and every community has that. I think culturally, with the advent of the web and blogs and social media and instant everything, it becomes very, very, very easy to get caught up in the negativity. So you gotta fight back, and you gotta try and convince people that if you give in to the anger, you give in to the conspiracy theories, and you give up to all those people who think you live in a bad place, guess what? You live in a bad place. So, you do your best to try to keep people positive. Trust me, I got caught up in the anger and the negativity. It came out of nowhere. I didn't know how to deal with it. I don't think a lot of people knew how to deal with it.
Right.
But I think we've at least turned the tide a little bit.
Well, I think people get negative because they feel powerless.
Sure.
So the question is how to empower them and make them into stakeholders.
Yeah.
And stakeholders is a word that wasn't used around here for a long time, but I hear it used a lot in the government and across town now.
Yeah.
Because it's really important. And just me trying to start a newspaper,
Yeah.
I need this county, this community to be progressive and on the move because I'm trying to start a business. I'm in the purest part of capitalism. I need a progressive county. And I think the county is. I think it's got all that great potential. When I talk to the old timers about what's different now than the old days, they always cite that. We were a progressive county. If you look around and the things that we built that were unique, a civic center that's way bigger than this community needs ever, And I remember when they built it, I was like,
sure.
And now it's like it's too small.
Correct.
Right? So there was a vision there that a lot of people didn't have, and you just see these visions, and I get the feeling that's back again.
Well, I think you're spot on. Salisbury, it was people like Henry Parker and Joe Long and Frank Morris and Bill Otis, and the names can go on and on. They knew that we had to step up as a community. We don't get an airport by accident. We get an airport because we pursued it. We don't get a community college out of the blue. We get a community college because we pursue it. The retail shopping end of Salisbury, that was Henry Parker and Mayor Martin said, you know what, let's go develop that north end. I see the same thing now. You got all that young group of guys downtown, Jake Day and Chris Eccleston and the Gilkersons and Jamie Heater and the names go on. They clearly get it. I had lunch yesterday with Chris Eccleston, and this is a guy who's
Still Marva Veteran Builders.
Exactly. Yeah. He's a war veteran,
yeah.
Young guy, entrepreneur, and he's starting to, everything that he talks about, he spells the word community, and he capitalizes the unity portion of it. And he's involved. I think that people are responding to the call. I know this is your show and this is one-on-one and we're on Pack 14, but you look at your newspaper, you look at the Salisbury Independent. I was honored to be part of your, sounding board team for a while.
Yes.
And I was convinced that you were on to something. I was convinced that people were ready to have a vehicle that kind of brought forth a sense of community. And I think that your paper, the success of it reflects where people are and what they want to be doing. And so I congratulate you.
Thank you.
It's not a knock against the Daily Times or a WBOC or a WMDT.
They serve great purposes.
Absolutely.
They do. I mean, a community like ours with 2 television stations.
2 TV stations. We have 2 newspapers.
And a public TV, three stations. So
No, that's right. And it's you found a niche and you're filling it, and I think we're better off for it.
Yeah, not to make it all about me, but I brought this copy. To me, this is, I don't know if anyone can see it on TV, but to me, this is a childhood memory. So to people who are maybe from here or don't get it, it's just a blurry picture of something in the park and it's the back of a man's head.
Yeah.
But to us who used to go to that bandstand, which you helped to rebuild, and sort of see that again, this is Salisbury.
It's Americana.
Yeah, it just blows me away.
Yeah.
And the photographer took it, did not know what she was doing in terms of,
Sure. Yeah.
of how important it was. So that's the kind of stuff that we hope to reflect. And I see you reflecting that same sort of spirit in everything that you do.
I try. I mean, you're trying. I think that, look, you grab the headlines from around here, or you grab the headlines from around the world recently. It seems like it's an increasingly scary place. I've always contended that it's not a scarier place. We just have more ways to see the bad things that are going on.
Right.
And CNNs and Fox and MSNBCs and the internet and Google, they didn't exist when the bad things were happening before. The Wild West, if the Wild West had existed in today's world.
We had cell phones with video.
Correct. So we have to try and remember, I think, as a community and as individuals, that you can't look at that stuff every night. I personally am on about my 3rd straight year. I have given up network TV news. I never watch the political shows anymore, ever, because all I think that they do is engender that anger, and it's us against them. And I think we have to try and do better in the us against them characterization of things. That's why I started this little hobby of mine called onesalisbury.com. It's just a website. I do it in my basement, but I do it on positive stories. And when you get a positive story and you see that it was seen by a couple thousand people, it's like, okay, again, getting back to the theme, I think people are hungry for it.
Yeah, and it's not all positive. You find a positive in something that's a potential negative, or someone overcoming a hardship, and that's usually what's important. I think when you watch ABC Sports, it's always the athletes. They're always overcoming some kind of hardship to succeed.
Well, the good stories, if you dig deeper, you can sit here and be very angry at what you see in professional and athletics these days. But when you break it down and you try to find the stories and the people, that's what keeps you going.
Yeah. Downtown Salisbury.
Yeah.
I have an office down there now, and I love being there.
You should.
But before, I would have felt like a fool down there. What has happened?
I think things are cyclical, and it's time. There were efforts that turned out to be less than successful. This is not a great big puzzle to figure out.
Right.
The city of Salisbury went one direction for a long period of time, centered around urban Salisbury and kind of a model that was tried and true, but really didn't work here. And so you take the combination of it's time, it's the right time, and as importantly, it's the right people doing it all. You've got an atmosphere now in Salisbury where we're starting to look like Berlin. We're starting to look like, if you have an idea, bring it forward. Mayor Ireton correctly about a year and a half ago called things around here the culture. We have developed a culture of no. That's unacceptable. And so with some decisions and leadership and election changes and entrepreneurial energy and the right time and cool ideas, Headquarters Live, the Brick Room, the ball drop at New Year's Eve, things have nothing builds momentum like momentum, and they've got it. And they've got the right people, and they've got the right ideas and passion. Look at Third Friday and Jamie Heater. I mean, it's extraordinary. So we're getting there.
It's amazing to me because someone said last year, "Are you going to go to the ball drop?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm going to go to downtown Salisbury in the freezing cold and watch the." Yeah, that's on my list of things to do. Now this year, I can't wait to go.
And I went last year. Now, granted, I was home by 11 o'clock.
But the photos, there's like 3,000 people there.
It was extraordinary. I'm a very passionate person. I cry. I literally shed a tear while I was down there. I have never, ever seen anything that successful in this town. And to see 3,000 people on New Year's Eve. And the part that I also think is important, these 3,000 people, Salisbury is on the verge downtown of becoming cool. I don't think we've ever been cool as a city. We've been functional, we've been progressive, we've done the right things, but we've never been cool. And I know that's a silly word, but it's really not. And I think that that's what's happening, is that there's cool things to do down there. at least once a month. You got the right energy, and suddenly once things like Headquarters Live open, I think it's going to be truly a destination, and that's very exciting.
Well, I was stunned, and this is really silly, but
I just talked about cool, so how
No.
silly can it be?
My daughter, who's 14,
Sure.
For her homecoming dance, the girls wanted to have a photograph taken, all of them, 10, 12 girls. They selected the Fred Atkins monument.
The obelisk.
The obelisk
Yeah.
on the downtown plaza as
Yeah.
their backdrop. And I was like,
What?
what?
Yeah.
But to them, it's cool.
That's right. And to them, and that's what's so exciting, these people that are leading the charge, they're 30-somethings. There's guys like us who are 50-somethings. And then there's people like your daughter who are seeing what's going on. And again, culture change, paradigm shift.
Yeah.
Downtown suddenly becomes cool.
Our good friend Bob Lown,
Yeah.
based on what I read on Facebook, just proposed to his girlfriend
Downtown.
downtown.
Right.
He didn't go to the beach.
Yeah.
He didn't go to Aztec.
So think about that, what that says. Yeah. It's very exciting.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
You talk about the young leadership, and we have an interview in our paper right now, actually, of Matt Massarello, our state's attorney, who I just found out, I did not know, is 40 years old. Now, I had to find that out because in the story, he mentions a friend of mine from Ocean City who helped teach him to surf, and he called my friend, who's my age, a father figure.
So after you picked yourself off the floor with that shocking statement.
And the person was Salty Selt, who's the great surfer and motorcycle rider, and he's hardly a father figure.
Right.
He's got kids, but I mean,
Right.
the young people who are leading Salisbury now, who really have taken over, the mayor's a young guy,
Yeah.
council president, just everywhere you look.
Yeah.
Did our generation not do enough for Salisbury, and now these young guys have figured it out?
In my opinion, yes. In my opinion, there was that group of us and our peers who either dispersed and went elsewhere, and they kind of didn't catch the fever, and I use that lightly, I guess, as a phrase. But for whatever reason, these guys have caught the fever. And it's interesting because when you think about the Salisbury leadership in the 1960s, we had our youngest mayor ever, who was Frank Morris, who was
Elected
32.
at 40. 32? Okay.
Joe Long and Henry Parker, all these names that we view reverentially, well, they started their leadership at a young age.
Phil Tillman,
Phil Tillman,
whose chair this is.
Norm
Yes.
Conway,
Yeah.
all these people began their career of community service in their 20s and 30s. And so I'm not sure what happened to our group, and clearly many of our group have stepped up and they're successful, and that's by no means a disparaging comment.
Right.
But it's wonderful to see that this, the spirit has been caught by this new group of entrepreneurs and civic-minded individuals. It's awe-inspiring to me.
Now, you lived in town for a long time. You
Yes.
moved out of town. You moved back in town.
Yeah. I was...
Well, out of town, you moved
Well,
just
I moved
across
to-
the border.
yeah,
Yeah,
we
in an
moved-
area that should be in the city of Salisbury.
Correct.
Yeah, but
I moved to suburbia.
right.
Karen and I, we were married, and our first home together was on College Avenue, right across from the university and the tennis courts.
Right in the middle of
You
everything.
got 8,000 to 10,000 cars a day going
Yeah.
past, Route 13 and the college. And then we moved to suburbia. We thought the grass might be greener. Well, I moved to the quietest place that I'd ever lived in. It's one of Salisbury's loveliest neighborhoods. It's Tony Tank. But it was just too quiet for me. So after 4 years of living there, it just didn't seem natural. We're now living on Forest Lane, again, a little bit closer to being in the middle, and it seems more home to me. I realize there are inherent risks there. Sadly, we all recently read the headlines of the 83-year-old gentleman who was assaulted 1 block from my house, 2 blocks from his house. But you can't give up. You can't give up. And so I felt like I needed to be back in the city limits. It felt, even though Wyman Drive, where I grew up,
Right.
wasn't in the city limits, again,
Right.
in a quirk of our
Right.
geographical distinctions. But it just feels right to be back in the city.
Yeah, and I see a difference with that horrible situation happening where the kids attacked the man.
Yeah.
But the politicians, rather than put their head in the sand about this.
Yeah.
They're actually talking about a curfew for kids. Now, it would not have changed the outcome in this situation.
Understood.
But it's actually generating a hard talk about kids running around town and what that does to get the kids in trouble and to get other people in trouble.
Yeah.
You know, the old line, if you're out at 2 in.the morning, nothing good is going to happen.
That's correct. You know, Chief Duncan, she came from Mount Vernon, New York, which borders New York City. And she had gang issues and bad guy issues, and she was successful in dealing with that. And so, you know, it's going to be tough, but I think I salute those that are not burying their heads and are trying to come up with a solution, because I think we need control, and I think it's about losing control, and the community doesn't want that to happen.
So where do you see the community going?
I see it going in a positive direction. I get a little concerned, to your talking point about progressive. That's what I am. That's what we need to be. I worry a little bit about the ideological, hardcore conservative view of the world and how it might collide with our momentum. But I have confidence in the leadership on the county level. I think Bob Culver certainly earned his victory, and we give him the opportunity to succeed. I hope that his philosophy and the governing philosophy, which is a little bit conservative, can still be progressive. And I think that those two words can exist. In the city of Salisbury, I see continuing momentum. Nothing I see says that we're not headed in the right direction. It's not easy. We still have, in a sense, 2 Salisburys, I think. It's the one that you and I know, and then the ones that others know that we wouldn't want to trade places with. I think we have to address that side of the community. We have to let them feel like they're as involved as we are. We can't be 2 communities in one. But overall, I think we've got the right approach, the right attitude, the right people in place to kind of keep the momentum going forward.
Mike Dunn, it's a pleasure to have you as my first guest.
Thank you, Greg. It's my pleasure.
This is very exciting.
Thank you.
I hope you'll come back.
I will. I wish you much luck.
We'll see what the reviews are. You might
Exactly.
never want to come back again. You
Correct.
Never know. I kidded Phil. I was on the show early in his tenure, and then it took 10 years for him to get me back again.
Well, that said something about one of you. I don't know which.
So I don't know what happened in that 10 years. But then he had me like 3 or 4 times, like in 2 years. So I must have vindicated myself.
Well,
but I would love to have you come back.
My pleasure.
Thanks for being here. Made me feel relaxed. And you've been watching One on One with Mike Dunn. Very exciting. Great history of service. And I think there are more people like Mike Dunn in terms of how you do with helping the community. We'd be even better than we are. But thank you for everything that you do.
Thank you.
So that's it. Thanks for watching One on One here on Pack 14.